We just had a wild Saturday of baseball and one that we can't not talk about on a weekend podcast.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you adjust your headsets. Oh, there you go. That's a little bit better. Sorry about that. It's late on, was it Saturday night? Got a long weekend here, so my days are all messed up. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. There's my lower third. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer. Oh, by the way, someone asked me, are you really an Emmy-nominated television? Yeah, look at it. There's my Emmy nomination right there. Right there. Got it from my work in television. I produced on a bunch of TV shows. My Emmy nomination was for my work as a producer in San Francisco television. So there it is. There it is. You can call me Sully. I just happen to have that nearby my desk here. Oh boy, if I had won the Emmy, I would be holding it up there, but I lost to a cooking show. I'm still bitter. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And please follow us on YouTube and like us and subscribe. And for those of you who like to have a weekend show, look at what we're doing. We're doing a weekend show. We're doing another weekend show. We're doing a bunch of these. It's too much fun. I'm not going to wait till Monday or Tuesday to do another podcast when there's so many terrific ball games going on. Today was one of those great days. Of course, we've cut the cord here in my home, so I couldn't watch Atlanta versus Los Angeles, but I certainly listened to it. But I had on, it was, I mean, I always like to refer to the film Minority Report, where Tom Cruise had all the computer screens up and he's going like this, moving from one thing to another. That was me watching ball games today. Or like, when you see Batman at the Batcave, he has all these different screens up there and he's looking around. He's got the Riddler on that, the Joker over there. That was me. And I was just hopping from one game to the other. And it was such, oh my God, I was so glad I had chores to do today. I'm so glad I had chores to do today because it gave me an excuse to do the chores, to fold the laundry, to get the stuff all cleaned up and follow all these terrific games going, because the pennant races are taking some strange turns, and no stranger turn in all of the races is what has happened in the last few days in the American League, with Texas starting to fold, with Houston becoming mortal. The minute I did the podcast where I said, man, the Astros are playing like champs, like almost immediately started playing like chumps. And what has happened is it's allowed the Toronto Blue Jays, who looked like they were, nominally in it, but were they going to really get a shot? They had a chance today to pull within half a game of a playoff spot on the Sunday before Labor Day. They were in a position where they would be within the grasp of a playoff spot, and the teams ahead of them faltering. And the game that Toronto played, look, there were a lot of terrific games that were played today. There were extra inning games, there was walk-off games. The Cleveland-Tampa Bay game was unbelievable. But I honestly think the most fascinating game took place at Coors Field, because Toronto, suddenly hot, taking advantage of a flopping Texas team, jumped out. They were up 4 runs before the Rockies even came to bat. It's Coors Field, so we all know that runs are can come like crazy. But the Blue Jays were up 4 runs in the top of the first. They're up 5-0 going to the bottom of the second inning, and it really just looked like a game where, okay, the Rockies are not a good team. They're probably going to lose 95, maybe 100 games, and Toronto had their number. And then the bats for Toronto just went away. And because it's Coors Field, chip away, chip away, chip away. And the thing about it is, at this time of the year, you have no clue who the heroes are going to be. Brenton Doyle. Brenton Doyle. Have you heard of Brenton Doyle? Unless you're one of the Doyles, I'm guessing you haven't. He plays for the Rockies. And he cleared the bases and with a 3-run triple gave the Rocks the lead. Also threw a bullet to home in the middle to protect the sudden lead that the Rockies had. And then the Rockies took a 3-run lead into the 9th inning. And the Rockies brought in Justin Lawrence, who I guess is their closer. And Justin Lawrence could not have done a worse job if he was on the Blue Jays payroll. He was throwing the ball all over creation. He had high all over the map, all over the map. If I were up there, I would have just folded my arms, said, you have to throw me 2 strikes before I even pick my bat up. And so he was walking everybody. And that is the kiss of death in Coors, is putting runners on, because it's such a big offensive park. Not just because of the thin air and home runs flying out, because they compensate in building the stadium to have a larger field that would be deeper, because if it was a standard size stadium, there'd be even more home runs. But that means a ball into the gap is, chances are, a ball into the gap is going to be a triple. That's why so many cycles have been hit in Coors Field. And so with all this constantly bases loaded, okay, now here comes another run. All the Blue Jays needed was that big hit. That big hit. They had the likes of Vladdy Guerrero and such coming up, and they couldn't get that big hit. But then, Justin Lawrence was like up to 30 pitches with 2 outs and still throwing the ball all over the place. It got to be 8-7. And then came someone named Tyler Kinley, who makes Brenton Doyle sound like a household name. And Tyler Kinley came in and got the final out for this first save of the year. Why am I so fixated on this game? Because Toronto, as I said, had a chance to climb within half a game of a playoff spot. Now, this could all be wiped out. The Blue Jays could go on a huge winning streak, and they could wind up getting to the postseason. This could be all forgotten. Or the Blue Jays are in the middle of a tight race, and if they fail to make the playoffs by 1 game, you can look back at this one. You could go all year long, find a game here, a game there, a game there. Every team's going to lose 60. Every team's going to win 60. We all understand that concept. But the fact of the matter is, when you had a game that not only did you race up to a 4-run lead before the other team even came to bat, and the closer was doing everything but putting the game on a silver platter, and you still lose it. Remember that. Remember this game if Toronto falls a game short. Because you'll be fixated on the final week. But throughout the year, these little games happen. The fewer dumb games you lose, you could lose a dumb game in April and it means just as much. But now you don't have as much time to make up for it. You can't afford dumb games. There's fewer than there's like 30 some odd games left, maybe even less. And you're trying desperately to make up ground. And 2 teams have opened the door wide for the Toronto Blue Jays to come in. The Rangers, which we'll get to a little bit in segment 2, have been doing everything to make life wonderful for the other AL West contenders, and now to be wonderful to Toronto. And the Rockies opened the game horribly and closed the game horribly. And you still couldn't put a W up there? I'm just saying, if we get to the Blue Jays are only 1 game out and are about to play golf, remember this day as one that got away. This is one that the Blue Jays, man, it was being handed to you. Now, I mentioned the fact that the Texas Rangers are continuing their absolutely surreal slide right now. They lost again, this time in extra innings. Aroldis Chapman, who I've made it clear is not my favorite player in baseball, but he got the loss. I mean, look at he must have had some good games with the Texas Rangers since being acquired by from Kansas City. But it just seems like every time I flip to a Ranger game and it's late, Chapman's on the mound, he lets up the game-winning hit or the go-ahead hit or the game-tying hit or whatever. Today it happened again. And again, this was against Minnesota in Texas. And it was a wild back and forth game. And Donovan Solano was the big hero for Minnesota. He got 4 hits, got a big home run in the middle of it. Michael A. Taylor got a big hit. And Garcia, was got some big hit, got big lumber for Texas, but the Rangers are continuing their massive slide. I talked about this at length yesterday, that they went from being a team that looked like they were on pace to win 97 to 100 games. They were playing 600 ball. Now they're playing 556 ball. But beyond that, they've gone from it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to win the division and just totally leapfrog the wild card series to now they're not even secure a spot in the postseason. I mean, Toronto lost that horrible game that I mentioned earlier, but as of this recording, Toronto's only a game and a half behind Texas. If Toronto leapfrogs Texas, Texas will be on the outside looking in. And here's the other thing. The New York Yankees have dusted themselves off. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means in the long term for them. Um, they they're going to win the series against Houston in Houston. Giancarlo Stanton was the one who got the big home run today, and it was a wild back and forth game. Aaron Judge hit a home run. It was the bats were out, the homer bats were out. But the Yankees were the one standing at the end. And with that, the Astros, who made mincemeat out of the Red Sox. By the way, the Red Sox finally ended their losing streak, defeating Kansas City, but their season's over. Red Sox fans just hope they finish above 500. But the Astros are only a game ahead of the Rangers, and the Rangers are only a game and a half ahead of Toronto. There is a scenario that could have the Houston Astros miss the playoffs. It's slim because it requires Texas to get their act together. It requires Toronto to not lose dumb games. But it was a weird sensation seeing that the Astros looked like they were absolutely prime to clobber the Yankees. They were starting Verlander against Rodon game 1. They had Severino pitching today. I would have gone to any of the betting sites who are aligned with us. I guess we're with gone FanDuel, and I would have put my kids' college tuition that the Astros were going to win those 2 games, which I'm glad I didn't, because then I'd be denying them an education. But the Astros are making this interesting by not playing well. The Rangers are making this extraordinarily interesting by not playing well. And the Mariners are making it super interesting by playing well. J.P. Crawford hit the 9th inning home run in a wild back and forth game with the New York Mets. And with this now, remember, the Mariners didn't get to the 3rd wild card spot until about 2.5 weeks ago. Well, right now, they have a 1-game lead over Houston and a 2-game lead over Texas. And they would be missing the wild card round. Baltimore would have the best record in the American League, and give the Orioles credit. They've been winning the games they're supposed to win. They've won 7 of their last 10 games. Give them credit. They've been playing very, very well. Thank you very much. Tampa had been playing well, but they lost a wild, weird game against the Tampa Bay Rays. which ended on a sac fly where the Rays wound up winning that one in extra innings in walk-off fashion. In a game where the Rays bats were dead for most of the game, and yet they woke up at just the right time. But with Seattle suddenly looking like the strongest team, you're basically saying, can Seattle be better than Houston and Texas over the next 3.5 weeks? It looks like they can be, and it would be a lot tight. This whole race would be a lot tighter if the Toronto Blue Jays, don't continue to drop games they have no business dropping. Now, the American League is a little bit crazy, but you know what? Let's not look away from the National League wild card right now. As of this recording, there is and say it with me, 3-way tie for the third wild card spot. I don't know what all the tiebreaker implications are, but as of right now, Arizona, San Francisco, and Cincinnati are all in a virtual tie. Arizona and San Francisco are absolutely tied, same record. Cincinnati's played 2 more games, so they have 1 more win and 1 more loss. So it's a 3-way virtual tie, which means the possibility of anarchy is there, which means the possibility of all 3 of those teams completely in it towards the end of the year is sitting there. But do you know what is also interesting? Let's just say a scenario. Let's say Baltimore beats Arizona tomorrow. Okay. Let's say the Giants lose again to San Diego. Like the Giants got clobbered by San Diego today. Okay, that could happen. Let's say the Cubs, who are still a wild card team, beat Cincinnati. Yeah, that could happen. And Miami beats Washington. They clobbered Washington today. And Johnny Cueto got his first win of the year, and Sandy Alcantara is pitching today or pitching on Sunday for the Fish. If those 4 things happen, then there'll be a 4-way tie for the third wild card spot, because that would mean the Marlins would be one of the tied teams in there. As it is right now, the Marlins are only 1 game out of the playoffs as we are entering the Sunday before Labor Day. This is all great because it could be a sign of absolute, complete, and total and utter anarchy. And the top 2 teams remain the same. They're the Braves and the Dodgers. But an interesting thing has happened in Chavez Ravine, just a little bit down the 5 from where I'm sitting right now. All 3 games so far have been thrillers. Today was an extra inning thriller. But they have 2 things in common. Ronald Acuna Jr. has homered in all 3 games and must be taking the lead in the wild card, in the most valuable player chase in the National League. Today, Acuna homered, which was home run number 32. But Arcia homered in the 10th inning. After the Braves did have a base runner in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th innings, and it was 1-1 going into extra innings. Arcia hits a 3-run homer. The Dodgers wound up scoring the ghost runner in the bottom of the 10th. But the Braves won the series. 4-game series. Braves come in. All 3 games are thrillers. All 3 games won by the Braves. I'm not a big believer in statement games because when the leaves turn brown and the playoffs start, no one gives a darn about any of this stuff. But in terms of the Braves declaring said, yeah, we're legitimate pennant contenders. This is big. And if you're putting together the case for Ronald Acuna Jr., this is also big. And if this is a preview for what the National League Championship Series is, yes, please. Now, all those other teams, the Marlins, the Reds, the Giants, the Diamondbacks, the Cubs, the Phillies, and Milwaukee, one of them could very well win the pennant. But I'm going to tell you the truth. And my dad, if you're listening up there, please forgive me. I kind of want to see either the Dodgers or the Braves in the World Series. Upsets are fun. And 3 of the last 4 participants of the World Series from the National League have been massive upsets. the Nats in 2019, the Braves in 2021, Philadelphia last year. But that being said, these are the two best teams. I do want to see them play each other in the best of 7 series. And I do want to see whichever team makes it out of the American League, which right now looks like it could be the Seattle Mariners or the Baltimore Orioles. If I want to see one of those two teams lock antlers with either the Braves or the Dodgers. Why? Because it'd be good baseball. I mentioned the fact that the Yankees have dusted themselves off, especially after the dreadful 9-game losing streak, and they started calling up uh, Jason Dominguez and most of their other top prospects have been called up. And with that, the Yankees have done something which they couldn't do for a month and a half. For between the beginning of July and the recent series against the Detroit Tigers, the Yankees have won a grand total of 1 series, and it was against the dreadful Kansas City Royals. But since then, since calling up the players and shedding some of the dead weight, the Yankees won a series in Detroit. Okay, Detroit's not great. But now they've won a series against Houston. Houston is very good. And the team is infinitely more interesting now. And I mentioned this the other day. By the way, I got to give a shout out to Benjamin Haglin, who's one of my listeners, who pointed out that I was talking about how Jason Dominguez spells his name incorrectly, Jasson. But Benjamin pointed out that it was the way that he said he would be pronounced Jasson if that's how it was spelled. But someone else said it was that's actually the correct spelling for Martians, which I thought was actually kind of funny. I can't figure out where that comment went. If you're the one who did it, forgive me. I thought I had it up on my phone there. There's an interesting byproduct of this. This is probably going to save Brian Cashman's job. Cashman was probably going to get fired if the team limped to the end and stumbled to a 93 loss team, dead from the neck up old team. This is probably going to save his job. And maybe it should save his job. I mean, as I said before, the best job that Cashman ever did as a GM was between the dissolution, the dissolving of the core. Jeter, Posada, Pettit, Bernie Williams, Mariano Rivera. Once all of them were gone and A-Rod was gone, he had a contending team on the field in just a couple of years. That was a good job as a general manager. I would trash Brian Cashman. I do think they need a new voice in there, but that was a good job. And maybe he could make the choice and say, hey, I'm doing it again. Look, right now, it's already more interesting. And Boone might be the right guy to lead them. And wouldn't that be something that in the matter of a month, Cashman and Boone went from guaranteed to have lost their job to getting a call from the governor and saying, oh, no, keep him alive. Keep him alive. I still think, as someone who grew up a diehard Red Sox fan, I would love to see Brian Cashman stick around as the general manager of the Yankees, and so they can continue deep into their second straight decade without an appearance in the World Series. But I digress. I'll tell you what we are going to see. We are going to see a great day of baseball, but also maybe not as many people listened to the show the other day, so I am going to repeat the trivia question, which was, when was the last time the American League stolen base champion and the National League stolen base champion of that year met in the World Series? We've had times where the MVP, the last time the MVPs from each league appeared in the World Series, that was 2012 when Buster Posey and the Giants played Miguel Cabrera and the Tigers. The last time we had the two Cy Young Award winners facing the World Series was 2001. The Yankees' Roger Clemens and Arizona's Randy Johnson. All right. Well, when was the last time the stolen base king from the National League was in the World Series against the team that featured the American League stolen base king. Send me the answer to that trivia question on Twitter or whatever the hell it's called now at Sully Baseball or Locked On MLB Pods. Same handles on Instagram. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast or down here on the YouTube comments. Well, we're going to bring in Miller Thomas later, and we're going to talk about all sorts of things going on. And later on this week, probably on Friday, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the rumors of teams that may be wanting to move from their location other than the Oakland A's, which means discussions about possibly the White Sox, possibly the Orioles, possibly the Brewers, probably not the Brewers. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a later episode. But fulfilling my desire to give you weekend podcast episodes, and I'm going to keep them on going. This has been Locked On MLB for the whatever. It's either the second or the third, whenever you're listening to this day. I'm recording on the 2nd of September, 2023. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, I'm begging you, call me Sully.
You are Locked On.
Whoops. Hit the wrong button. I'm not even going to edit that out.